today is we're going to talk about non-negotiables, especially around interviews and placement type things. And then Dan and I have got a few other things that we want to discuss going forward. I know that there's some new people on the call actually, so I'm just going to obviously my name's Jodie. I am the legal case manager at the ITIA, which is the International Tennis Integrity Agency, and I'm sure everyone knows who Daniel is, but he's a partner at Sheridan's sports law firm in London. So yeah, Daniel, we'll just get going.
Yeah, the thing that we were discussing in the build up to our chat tonight was thinking about some of the non-negotiables or things about working, about interviewing, about trying to put your best foot forward in lots of different situations. So if it's applying for jobs, if it's going for interviews, if it's what you do once you're in a job, how to maximize the best possibilities for doing well. And you Jodie, gave me a few interesting bits of techniques, food for thought, just around some of the feedback that you got when you were actually applying for the role that you're in now. And I think that would just be interesting to share a little bit with the group. And then, I can offer a few other thoughts and ideas from some of my experiences and when I've spoken to other people about their experiences too.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thanks, Dan. Basically from not necessarily an interview point of view, but just from an application, from simply replying to emails, whether you speak to a partner or whether you speak to the admin assistant in a law firm or any sport organisation or anywhere, like I think it's really important to treat everyone with the same kind of respect, because a lot of the office and admin staff, they pass on remarks on how you reply to emails in a way. So if you're rude, like they're going to pass that on to the partners or people that are interviewing you. And that was something that I am the office manager, the role I'm at just now, actually made a point of saying that I was really polite in the emails and correspondence that I had when I was replying back, when they invited me to interview. Obviously I replied and said, thank you very much, looking forward to the opportunity, X, Y, and Z. But she said that in some emails that she had sent to some other applicants, they made it out to be that she was inconveniencing them by offering them to come to interview, and some of the emails that they had received back were really rude. So I just thought everybody kind of responded politely and whatnot to normal, to general emails, but it seems to be that not everyone does. So I would just basically just try and remember that everyone's human at the end of the day, and just to treat everybody with a bit of respect, whether it's good news, whether it's bad news, or not. I think it's really key just to be polite in your correspondence, verbally or otherwise. And that was feedback that I got from the role that I'm in just now, which, like I said to you, I just didn't think was even something that I needed to or should even consider. I've always done that, but apparently other people can be just a bit rude in replying to admin staff. So even for that in pre-COVID times as well, when you go for interviews, be polite to the reception staff when you go in the door, when you're sitting down, make conversation with the receptionist, ask how their day is, and just have general conversation, because you never know who the partner or the associate or that they will often ask the reception staff what that person's like on when they come into the building and how they speak to people. So I would definitely always your interview starts as soon as you put your foot through the door. It's not when you go into the actual door to meet your interviewers. It's literally when you go into the office door. So kind of present yourself in the best possible way from the get-go would be what I would suggest. But Dan, I'm sure you're going to input here.
I think there's quite a fundamental point to all of this. Now, I think when you say it, when I hear it, Jodie, it's such an obvious thing to almost be like, what, the first reaction to a lot of it is like, why are you even saying it? This is not to put you down at all. Thoughtfully, it's almost the exact opposite. It's like, I would so expect that everybody that is writing to someone about the possibility of a job would be respectful, would be humble, would be grateful, would be hungry, would be very careful about how they're articulating stuff, how they would put themselves across. And I was actually fascinated by the human condition of the opposite, which is that people wouldn't and didn't necessarily do that, which then got us thinking about actually, whether this is quite a usual thing that occurs. And I think just by way of human nature, and you see it all the time, there is obviously, and you see it every day, a status play happening. From particular ways, it's almost like at a disproportionate level, you have to impress the person that holds the most power, control, ability to make decisions, and otherwise, because they're the ones that matter in a way. And I think the more I think about it, there's a very simple truth that I think holds true, which my grandpa always told me, which is a universal truth, and I'm sure tons of people have always said to everyone along the line, which is, treat others as you'd expect yourself to be treated. And it's a very, very simple maxim that I think works very well. It's the same, it tends to be the same whenever I'm coming into the office at Sheridan's. I'll always have a bit of a chat with the security guard leaving or coming in the morning, or generally both, about football. I know he's a big Arsenal fan, which we have a bit of banter about that, and all about the various different football games or otherwise that have been on. But I think the important thing to stress there is that if you stay consistent and constant with the approach, which is everyone's a human being, as you said, everybody has the same types of interests, that actually, by way of mantra, you are more interested in the other rather than interesting to show yourself as interesting to other people. There's obviously a balance to be had, but the more I think about stuff in terms of my relationship building, my ability to build connections, is actually to think about the other person in any sense. It's the same as when we talk. I'm always really interested, Jodie, in hearing what's going on with you. I'm always interested, Bart, we've got online as well, always interested in stuff that you're doing, always thinking about ways to be able to think about other people. I think there is just a narrative which needs to be tweaked a little bit, which is, yes, you've got to think about yourself and your career and how you develop and the things that you can do and all the rest of it. But you're not in isolation from anybody. You're actually exactly the opposite. You're in a world with everybody. And the great thing that happens is that when you flip your mindset a little bit from thinking, it's all about me, what can I achieve, what can I do, how can I progress, to let's listen to all the different things that other people are doing and hear about all of those opportunities and think about those possibilities. The output is actually endless and relatively infinite, is the truth. And I just had, 2 or 3 conversations with people today, and bear in mind, it's obviously fantastic just to be around people. And as much as these calls are great, the idea one day is to actually do a GG community and actually get together for an afternoon or an evening and just speak to each other and have a beer or a glass of wine and actually just talk normally. But my idea, and the thing that I think is very important, I'm not, I plagiarize this from tons of people, is, it's important to understand the other. And the way that you understand the other is by thinking, you raise the tide for everybody by doing the things that work for everybody. So it just, your point about treating others with a certain respect actually just hit a slightly wider chord, which I was more interested to think about and develop and discuss in a bit more detail, Jodie.
Yeah, but I think that what you said, I totally agree with. But I think it's also, as I mentioned before, it's how you approach people on like LinkedIn for networking purposes as well. When you send, a LinkedIn request, why do you want to join that person? I mean, currently just now, I think I've got however many requests I've got in my request folder, and apologies if anyone's on this call that I've not accepted, but I sometimes have a lot, and I don't actually know why they want to connect, so I think I've just left them not read because there's no one's mentioned as to why they want to connect. Whereas the ones that do say, hi Jodie, I want to connect because of X, Y, and Z, I'm more than likely to have a conversation with them because I know they've got a common interest into why we want to connect. I just won't accept someone for the sake of just accepting. And when I was networking 12-18 months or so ago, every network request that I put to somebody, I always sent that message that says, how, and when you click add friend or whatever it is on LinkedIn, you can add a message or whatever. I literally wrote every single request I sent, I wrote a reason why I want to connect with that person, and whether they did, great, whether they didn't, okay, that was fine. But that was in my control. I could control, that option was there for me to write something. If I didn't write anything, okay, but if I wanted to connect with somebody, I wanted to make sure that they knew why I wanted to connect, whether it be an article that I read, whether that was a common interest that we had, whether I knew somebody that they knew, whether they worked with somebody, just so they can, flag up as to why they wanted to connect. And it takes a minute or 2 minutes to do that. And I think it's just, that's a vital 1 or 2 minutes that you could use that could benefit you, rather than not saying at all anything, and then just leaving, like in my case, people are being left unread or unaccepted just now because I don't actually know why they want to connect with me. So I think on you go.
Graham, I might just come to you in a second if that's all right, because I just want something that we really appreciate your input from a couple of sessions ago, and one of the things that brings up is quite an interesting point about like for me, for example, whenever I get a LinkedIn request, generally, unless I can see it's a very, very salesy bio from somebody that looks like they're going to sell me life insurance or some type of financial product or mentoring or something along those type of lines, I will tend to accept people and then see if there's anything that they follow up with. I was just thinking, Graham, from your perspective, for example, whenever you're trying to build relationships or start relationships on LinkedIn or any other medium, on email or otherwise, do you have a particular mindset that of how you'll approach that person and how to find the best way of connecting with them?
Yeah, I think so. I think it starts with a kind of a mutual understanding of, well, you start on a base level of how it comes back to the point you were talking about originally when you're applying for jobs or whatever it is. And the basic point is the person that's hiring you, it originally just wants to get on with somebody else. That comes at the core of it. So when it comes to networking, it's exactly the same thing. Can you get on with this person? Is there a shared interest in this person that might then flourish into some sort of business relationship? Good, great. If not, you're making a connection with somebody that down the line might come to something. But if it doesn't, it's still a shared interest. You've had a valuable conversation. You've spoken about something that you're interested in, because that's the reason why we're in these jobs that we're in, because we enjoy sports law, or we enjoy law, or we enjoy whatever it is that we are connecting with that person on that level. We want to speak to them about it and engage and potentially learn something from that person. And I think that's where it's the human element, as you say, Daniel and Jodie, it's the human element of connecting with somebody. And if it carries on and it flourishes on, or as you say, Jodie, if the LinkedIn request doesn't go anywhere, then so be it. But at least if it does, you've started on the right footing of, you've got a relationship with somebody that starts from a mutual appreciation of what each other does and what each other's interested in.
I think that's really great. And actually, for example, like for Dan and I, when I first reached out to Dan, I think it must have been about 2014, maybe 13, something 7 or 8 years ago. And that was just when I was at university, and I just wanted a general, advice on something. And then Dan and I didn't really speak for maybe 3-4 years, maybe something like that. And then when we eventually did speak again, like we kind of remembered our conversation that we'd had previously, but because we had such a good connection that first time, in a way, Dan, I think, and I were more accepting to kind of reach out to each other, because we knew that it would be reciprocated. So it wasn't like a cold problem, and I didn't have any difficulties at the outset. And I think had I had that, I probably wouldn't have reached out, but because we're both like we were both happy to speak to each other all those years ago, when I did reach out 4 or 5 years later, it was absolutely fine to do so. And yeah, we've been great ever since. Would you agree, Dan?
I wouldn't say great, but
I mean, I would say awesome, to be honest. I would say fantastic, but I don't know, I was just being polite.
Only joking. Completely agree. The truth is that a lot of the time I'll get there'll always be people that approach and ask particular questions on stuff, and that's in a way the whole reason why we're doing things like this. It's for people that want to join the calls. It's for people that want to listen to stuff afterwards as well that we put online. and to have that sort of accessibility to ask questions of particular things. So I completely agree. It's trying to find like-minded people, or just try and help people become like-minded people, is maybe something to think about. And there's loads of people out there that sort of that feel the same way. So, you know, the same as what Graham said, I'd be really interested in other views. Bart, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot just very briefly, if that's okay. Only because Bart, some of the people on the call might not know, but I've known Bart for a couple of years now, and Bart is the mastermind behind a lot of my content editing strategy, all of the little clips, podcasts, and anything digital that I put up. You emailed me best part of 2 years ago, Bart, just to see how you could help and get involved with stuff more generally. Now that we're sort of a bit further on in our relationship, you know, has there been ways that that's actually helped you in particular instances, or have you found building relationships easier because you started off, obviously you work with Gary Vaynerchuk as well, which is fantastic as well, and then to a lesser extent, you know, me as well, which is fantastic. How did you go about thinking about who you wanted to connect with, what you had to offer, and then, you know, the relationships that then you've built as a result?
Yeah, sure. So I always start with trying to bring value to the person that I want to connect with. So like with you, I wanted to bring you value, which in turn, I think brought me more value from you than I actually brought to you. And I think it's creating opportunities from working with other people, and whether it's bringing them value in, you know, making social media content or writing something for them. I think, you know, connecting with like-minded people is really important to expand.
And when you say connecting with like-minded people, then how are you actually doing some research? Did you do some research into me? How are you actually then, you know, working out who you want to connect with, the relationships you want to build, etc.?
Yeah, so I usually trying to find something that we've got in common. So like with you, you're a lawyer, I'm a law student, you like football, I like football. So I'm trying to connect something that we both might have in common, and then trying to bring value to you in some way around that.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. And I mean, how I've kind of explained it, I mean, maybe not so much on this call, but I came from civil litigation background, you know, and I really wanted to then move into sports, or the sports sector, which is, as I often tell people who are not on legal, it's like being a doctor and specializing in cardiology and then wanting to go to neurology. So it's the exact same, it's the same like sector, just a different field of that sector. So sometimes it's really difficult to you know, cross bridges. And then what I then had to do is I then researched into the people that I wanted, or to be honest, at the start, I didn't even know who was in the sports field. I didn't know who I could reach out to. I had absolutely no idea. And at that point, law and sport was one of the big ones that kind of flagged up. And I think Sean Cottrell had a few articles about 10 top tips to be a sports lawyer or something like that I'd read, and then Dan, I think, had another article or something that I'd read off the back of that. So it was like a domino effect. And then I realized, actually, this seems to be quite a male dominated sector. I wonder if there's any females in this sector. And then that's when I reached out, and Graham knows her, and so does Dan, to a sports lawyer called Laura McCallum, which is the legal counsel at Dundee United Football Club now, but she used to be at Harper McLeod in Glasgow. And I reached out to her because I thought, oh my goodness, in such a male dominated world, there's this woman who has had so much like amazing success. This would be fantastic. And I reached out to her on LinkedIn, I think, and Twitter, and then we had a few conversations, and then I had a call with her, and then I met her at an event, and we've been for coffee and such like that since then. So a lot of things can happen purely on the basis of A, your research, B, reaching out to somebody to say why you're interested, and then if they're free, you know, they have the time to spend with you. And so Laura gave me a call, I spoke to her for a while, and then we met up at a conference. I think it was about January 2 years ago, I think, or so, and then we've stayed in touch ever since. And it's just great to build relationships like that. But ultimately, these people aren't going to come to reach, to come and find you. You have to find them, and that's how it should be. I mean, everyone's so busy, in their lives as it is. But if you want to do something, you'll make time to find out what it is that you want to do, who it is that you can contact. And yeah, it takes time, and not everyone will reply. Of course, not everyone will reply, but that's how that's kind of how I kind of got, that's how I reached out to people. And then eventually from that, and then Laura then recommended somebody else that I would reach out to. And it's like a domino effect. So once you speak to one person, they then may open up doors to somebody else and somebody else. And then from that, I managed to speak to a lot of people. But yeah, there's certainly all positives of networking, as long as you spend time and the effort to research as to why you want to speak to a particular person.
No, I completely agree, Jodie. And I'd really encourage, we've got a little bit more time to be able to, for people to be able to ask questions on anything we've talked about. Literally, this is just an open forum to discuss. We've got some new people on, which is great as well, and some familiar faces as well, which is awesome. I think the idea that I and myself and Jodie and others will try to emphasize is this is just a forum to ask questions, to ask things about career development, building relationships, building a knowledge base, working out the sort of career paths, thinking about those soft skills, working out how to network in different ways. And to be fair, a lot of the conversations we've had, Jodie, in the past on the previous sessions as well have been around particular hot topics in the sports and entertainment space more generally. So as anybody has, if they want to put it in the chat, if they literally just want to unmute themselves and ask particular questions, the idea hopefully is to be able to ask anything that you're interested in talking through. And Jodie, in the meantime, while anybody puts their thinking caps on, if there's particular things that anyone wants to reach out and talk about, you were mentioning in our prep about a couple of quotes that you had read and seen and want to plagiarize. So
I thought it might be off my phone so I can tell me exactly
have
what
I given you enough time to be able to find it?
No, I've got it on my phone, it's fine. There was two actually. There was one that Gary Neville had just tweeted out, I saw on Twitter like a couple of days ago, and he was in a quick Q&A, and I think somebody had asked him, what's the best advice Sir Alex Ferguson had given you, and his reply was, you have a choice every day: work hard and never give in, or don't. The choice is up to you. And I totally agree with that. And then shortly after that, I then saw another quote on another social media platform, and it was by a guy called James Clear. And I would really recommend signing up to his newsletter. You get like these a weekly newsletter, and Dan was the one that recommended this one to me. And his quote was, one push-up is better than not exercising. 1 minute of guitar practice is better than none at all. 1 minute of reading a book is better than, 1 minute of reading is better than never picking up a book. And it's better to do less than you'd hoped than to do nothing at all. And Dan and I were saying in the call at the start, like, I think a lot of people come into things expecting to get on 100% immediately. And whilst that's realistic for some people, it's not for everyone. And I think doing 1% of something is better than doing 0%. So I think that it's so important to, it's like going out for a 5K run. I certainly can't just put on my running shoes and go out for a 5K run. If I can run 100 meters, I'll be thinking I've won a gold medal. So there's no point. Everyone's, levels of success are different, but I think to do something is better than nothing. So you can relate that to anything, in life, whether it's been networking, or say I'll reach out to 5 people today rather than the unexpected of say 25 people a day, or I can't do something, like I can't do that. Just do something is rather than nothing at all, like reading one page or going out for a walk for 5 minutes rather than half an hour, or just something. Something is always better than nothing. And I think you can you can use that for every means in life. But Dan, I think you had one as well. Did you not have the one that you
it was Paul McCartney's daughter, Stella McCartney, is obviously a famous fashionista and designer, and all-round influencer, and she said every small step that you take is better than no action at all. And without this turning into a motivational session too much, I think the thing that struck me about what you've said, and if I just say one thing beforehand in terms of James Clear has written a book called Atomic Habits, and it's one of my favorite books. I read it about 4 or 5 months ago. So he has a newsletter that he sends out every week as well, with some pretty motivational quotes as well, which I really enjoy. And I sometimes post on my various social channels, whatever else it might be. But the thing that he advocates a lot, and which actually, Jodie, is the common theme of both of those quotes from Neville and James Clear, I think, is consistency. And it's, I think, one of the most massively underplayed character traits anybody can have. It is boring, it is mundane, it is regimented in terms of the negative connotations of it, but the positive connotations of consistency are the main takeaway that James Clear makes from his book, which is compounding.
Yeah.
The power of compounding things day after day after day.
Yeah.
And almost that, picking up the guitar, picking up the book one day, and then doing it the second day, and doing it the third day, and doing it the fourth day. And that idea of consistency and application over time is massive. It's the same that Matthew Syed writes about in Bounce, and the 10,000 hour rules that everyone's talked about in Outliers and different books as well. But the best manifestation of consistency, and again, when we talk about consistency, it doesn't matter what the topic is. In a way, it's like, okay, I want to get better at knowing more stuff about a particular industry, or I want to exercise more, or I want to try and build my network a bit stronger by investing 20 minutes every day into connecting with more people online or otherwise. But the consistency message is the one that usually compounds well, and in the long term leads to disproportionate benefits. Yeah. Because like we've talked about previously, everybody sees the output, the outcome, being at the top of the mountain. Everybody loves to live at the top of the mountain. Well, the truth is that everybody usually actually loves the process of climbing to the top of the mountain more, rather than seeing the output. And I think it's Angela Duckworth in another book that I love and I recommend to a lot of people, called Grit, which I really enjoy. And Angela Duckworth did a brilliant TED talk as well that I really recommend to people. But in her book Grit, she talks about how gritty people, which is people that don't give up that much or that easily, that keep persevering even when things aren't necessarily going brilliantly, that have the learned strength of character to keep on going. She has this phrase, which I really love, which every time I speak to many athletes, I'm lucky enough to speak to a lot of clients and athletes and people in the talent business and people more generally. This phrase really resonates with them, which she calls the mundanity of excellence. And what that basically means in my mind, the mundanity of excellence is the boring process that you have to constantly do for a long period of time to actually get to the point where people think you are potentially an expert or a would-be expert in a particular topic. And I think, there's all of this culture around, instant success and instant failure, or instant fame or fortune or whatever else it might be.
Doesn't happen.
But the truth generally being is, it's that mundanity of excellence. It's the day after day after day after day. And
I can relate to that in so many ways, because I don't want people thinking on this call that I have been, this most successful lawyer or whatever for so many years, because the job I'm in just now, I've only been there for 9 weeks now. And talking or just listening to what Dan was saying, prior to lockdown last year, I didn't have a job this time last year. So I literally, before COVID happened, there was potential job potential opportunity on the horizon. And then because of COVID, recruitment was paused, understandably. And then in that element, I then thought, oh my goodness, what am I actually going to do for the next year? What can I possibly do? I thought that no one's going to be hiring. What am I going to do? And I always wanted to do sports law in a way. And I thought, well, you know what, I'm actually going to take this into my control, and I'm going to do what I can. So I treated every day like it was a work day, work 9 to 5, doing whatever. And that could be trying to find as many webinars to attend, trying to find as many conferences. And with everything now being on Zoom and online, I could attend so much more than I normally would ever be able to do, because it was all online. Everything was free, didn't have to pay for anything to go anywhere. And when I was networking as well, a lot of people were able to speak to me because they weren't having to commute. They weren't out for dinner at night. They weren't at a show. They weren't at a concert. They weren't anywhere, because nobody could go anywhere. So I used that to my advantage. And I mean, COVID, of course, has not been a good thing for anyone, but I had to use it to my advantage, because I thought I'm going to have to do something. So when Dan's talking about the mundane tasks, there was months, literally 50 months or so, when I was doing the same things day in, day out, networking, rejections, emails, cover letters, applications. Honestly, this took hours and hours and hours. I have a spreadsheet of the many people I've contacted over the past kind of 50 months or so, and it probably is about 50 to 100 of just the people that I reached out to on LinkedIn, the ones that replied, the ones that I had a virtual coffee with, the ones that I had a call with, the ones that I could meet up when I could. And some didn't reply and some did, but I made myself do these things every single day, Monday to Friday, just to kind of get into the routine of getting this and doing this. And then the job that came along just now, I applied for it. And I think certainly the work that I did in the past year and the past 6 months certainly helped and showed all the things that you need, ambition, perseverance, resilience, all that kind of thing. Like that probably helped me. But there was definitely a time when I thought, last year or 50 months ago, when this is impossible. How am I ever going to get around this? And I know many people on this call may be feeling similar, if they're students, if they're graduates, if they're trying to go from one law sector to another. So it can happen, but I just wanted to say that I hope it wasn't coming across that we were just saying everyone gets these things easily, because I can absolutely testify that this did not come to either Dan or I easily, and there was a lot of hard work and perseverance in the background that not everyone sees. And I think that was one of the reasons Dan and I wanted to set up this community, was because we each have our own personal experience of rejection, of working hard when no one else thought that you could do it. You have to believe in yourself enough to keep going. And there's so many times, and people have been said to me, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why don't you just go back to civil litigation? You were good at it, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't want to, and life's too short not to do for what you want to do. So I just went for it. And eventually the job paid off, but it was certainly a long road. I mean, Dan will testify, because I spoke to him multiple times over the past year, and he's been a really good support for me. It was a tough road.
One thing I maybe is for our next DG community discussion point is probably around rejection and bounce back ability, and those types of fixed and growth mindsets that we talked about quite a lot ourselves. That I think that might be the topic for the next discussion. But I see, Jodie, we've got a couple of questions in the box, and if I just ask everybody else as well, feel free just to chime in with any comments, ask questions, put your hand up, ask some questions.
Liam, I see you've got a question. If you want to unmute yourself and ask it, that would be great. Is Liam there?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes,
Thanks. No, I was just wanting to ask, obviously there was a lot of media clamour last week from like Gary Neville sending out a petition for people to sign, etc., and all the kind of fallout from the Super League stuff was talking about maybe the need for like an independent regulator in football. I remember, Dan, obviously you saying in the past how financial fair play was kind of a thing that came along and you sort of fixated on it and wanted to be the expert on it, and that was kind of like a really kind of new thing you could get your teeth into. And I sort of see if we went in that direction with an independent regulator, because it would be new, it could kind of be like that sort of topic. So I have been sort of looking into it a bit, but I was just kind of wondering from your perspective who you thought would be kind of the winners and losers from it, and whether it was kind of actually a viable option or more of just a nice idea.
No, great question, Liam, and thanks for that. I actually did a Dan and Omar show podcast, which I think I think I'm going to try and post it a bit later on, which is actually talking specifically about the viability. Maybe I did it last week, I can't even remember now. On the viability of an independent football regulator. I think the actual more important question, as you sort of articulated halfway through the question, was, can you and or others start thinking about how to become people that can give valued opinion on those type of questions, those subject matters that crop up, if it's financial fair play, or if it's NFTs, or if it's an independent regulator, or if it's how transfers work. And that's just obviously a few specific siloed points in football. I think substantively, at the moment, what Neville mentioned is, the truth is, I don't think he's articulated as yet, I could be wrong unless I've not seen the substantive document, why an independent regulator is needed. He's talked in the past about how the football stakeholders, if it's the Premier League, if it's the EFL, the FA, UEFA and others, sort of can't get their houses in order, mainly around distribution of monies. So that's a lot of the thing that we're talking about, really. And if it's to do with two things, the distribution of monies and cost controls, then to a degree, the cost control provisions by UEFA or by the Premier League or by the EFL have worked to varying degrees of success. Query, the enforcement of particular decisions at the EFL, Premier League and UEFA. If we're talking about how money should be distributed, I'm not necessarily sure a regulator is needed specifically just for that task to a degree. There could be, and has been in the past, as you may have seen, sort of government intervention into the UK re-tender for broadcasters for Amazon, Sky and BT, in that the government look minded to grant an exemption under the Competition Act in order then to be able to, for the Premier League to provide more solidarity monies to the EFL and the pyramid. So I think the question to be asked, and I'm sorry I've gone about it in a long-winded way, is not necessarily is an independent regulator needed, but why is an independent regulator needed? Because a lot of the tasks are fulfilled by the various stakeholders at the moment. The question is whether there is too much self-interest, and everybody ultimately is self-interested to a degree, in being able to provide a cohesive roadmap to understand how, I guess, funds are distributed and how costs are reined in. But I think so long as those types of issues can be solved, probably alongside the owners and directors test and issues around ongoing governance of football clubs and financial stability, they seem to be the bigger issues that will probably come into the mix once all of those debates begin, I think.
Yeah, we just asked him, he's a sports agent and not from what law. So what books or articles to read for player contracts would you recommend?
Well, there's a very good book called Done Deal that I hear is pretty good to the things that I would, the articles and books that I'd say is that there's a very, very good book called Football and the Law, which is edited by a really renowned QC called Nick DeMarco. And that is probably, I think, one of the most, the strongest textbooks, legal textbooks in the industry on all football related matters. And there's a lot of detail in there about transfers, contracts, employment contracts, different types of football related matters as well. And I co-wrote the European law chapter in that book over Christmas and holiday time, which Holly was not very impressed with me at, but that's a different story. So that book, Football and Law, is brilliant. It's literally filled with football and sports law experts writing about their specific fields, and it's a really, really important read. The other is there is a seminal, Bible really called Sport and the Law, which is drafted by two, of the best lawyers in the space that have been around for a lot longer than I have, and that is really a very thick, detailed, no holds barred, comprehensive view of sports law, possibly European and from a global perspective as well, depending on the types of regulations. But they're both pretty dense books. The other side is obviously there are books like mine and Done Deal. There's another great book called The Price of Football, which is more from a financial perspective. And then there's other books like Soccernomics and other ones. But there's another book called Football Leaks, which I'm sure a lot of people would have heard of, which was all the leaks of particular contracts and behaviours of football clubs and stakeholders in the space. That's actually a very interesting read as well, just to understand a little bit more about all of the detail of what's going on. So yeah, hopefully that's quite a good mix. The other thing, very briefly, is I would really recommend the website, and I would do it quite regularly. You've mentioned it, Jodie, before, Law and Sport. They're actually in the middle now of their football law conference that I really recommend. I've been listening in on a number of days to that. And I think there are still student discounts and discounts available for the few more days of that. And then obviously on the content side, they have a whole section on football law related topics, and there's tons of really interesting stuff on that as well that I would highly recommend too. The other thing that would be useful to find out from people, and again, it doesn't necessarily need to be now for the call, it can be in the LinkedIn group as well, is just thinking about topics that people are interested in hearing more about as well. It might be substantive industry stuff across sport or entertainment. It might be more developmental skills stuff around like things like failure, rejection, applying, resilience, mindset, that type of stuff. And I think it's important a lot of the time just to sometimes be thinking about those type of issues because, especially from our type of structured career, which is, you do an undergrad degree in law, then you do law school, and then you get a training contract, and then you expected to be a very good lawyer, and sort of every step is quite regimented, when actually life generally is far from that in truth. And so the whole idea of community, of us chatting, us trying to demystify that actually there's always bumps in the road, but there's always really interesting practices, processes, things that you put in place, other people there to be able to help when things get tough or to share experiences. And that's almost the point. We don't really want a sort of glossy, everything's perfect. We definitely don't want that everything's messy and there's a lot of trouble, but usually it's somewhere probably in the middle of all of that. And that's why hopefully things like this will be of value to people.
I think it's things that this was like a thing that I wish I'd had when I was at uni or at struggling, last year or the year before or whatever, just like a community where you could reach out, ask questions, no one's judging you because people have been in similar situations, and if people don't feel confident enough to say anything, that's also absolutely fine. But if anyone wants to drop me a message afterwards on LinkedIn or whatever, I promise I will accept your request, even if you don't put something in the box. It's not an issue, but I'm more than happy to give time. And Dan, I don't want obviously this to be like an hour of motivational speaking either, but it's a bit of a full circle thing for me, because now I have people reaching out to me asking for advice, when actually 12 to 2 years ago it was me asking Dan or anybody else for advice. So it's really weird for me to have people asking the questions that I was asking a couple of years ago, but anyone can be in that situation. And the fact that a lot of people gave me time when I asked for it, I am always happy to give time to anyone who asks for it, because I know what it's like to be in that situation where you just want a reply or you just want half an hour of someone's time. So I'm always more than happy to do that, and whether that be on this call or separately, if anyone wants to arrange a call or whatnot, please just let me know on LinkedIn, and I can always make time for that.
Super. That's really good, Jodie. Well, I think we're more or less there then, if that's the case, which is great. And firstly, thanks everyone for joining. All I would ask is, please feel free to recommend this if you actually think it's any good to other people, to either join the community, to ask questions, to post things in the chat. Part of the idea of this is to actually network with each other and understand what each of us are doing in lots of ways. There's lots of really talented people even in this chat, never mind in the over 200 people that are in the community, I think, as well. And you've got to sometimes use that as the first step to be able to connect to people. So I'm really enthusiastic about hopefully trying to keep these sessions going for as much as we can, even though Man United's on soon. Yeah, and just generally find interesting areas to talk about. But I think next time, Jodie, subject to what you think and anybody else thinking about, I think the whole rejection and how to try and do better and think about things.
I'm more than happy to do that, and I think it's helpful to have, obviously not the whole call based on that, but I think having a third or a proportion of time every call just talk about soft skills or rejection or failure or whatever is helpful, and then we can kind of move on to, although failure is, I always think failure, it is negative at the time, it seems negative, but actually it's a positive, because it makes you do something better the next time. So there's always good things that come out of it, and I'm such an optimist because I feel like you have to be in life at times. But I think it's good to discuss elements of that, and then there's always loads of things going on in the world of sport and entertainment anyway throughout the month, so we often talk about and touch on different topics as well. But I know Dan was saying, and I've written it down, that you've got one of your clients coming on the call next month, and it is a guy called Nick Robertson, who is a sport agent. I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, just very briefly. So yeah, the idea is I might not be every month, but what I want to try and do is introduce really interesting clients to the community as well, really, and for you to ask them particular questions, for Jodie and I to do a bit of a Q&A as well, and to touch on lots of different areas of their business, of their motivation, of stuff that hasn't gone as well, and the interesting industry things that they're doing. Most of them are entrepreneurs, and have put themselves out there in lots of different ways and have to deal with, athletes, entertainers, people generally in the sports and entertainment space. So yeah, Nick's happy to join for an hour's chat, and hopefully that'll be a good opportunity for everyone to connect with him and to ask questions and to hear more about his journey too.
Yeah, that sounds great. And before I go, I just had a thought there about actually a podcast that I had listened to recently, and kind of, actually it's all sports related, but it's called High Performance by a guy called Jake Humphrey, and I sometimes just listen to that if I'm going for a walk or whenever, and the client or the people that he has had on there is absolutely fantastic. From Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to, there's loads of people from different sports, football, cricket, and women's sports as well. There's so many people on there that there's about, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 people that you could pick from, and it's so motivational. And he always ends up with what's your one negotiable or one non-negotiable or three non-negotiables that you would advice to anybody. And that's another thing I did when I was writing things down. I have a note on my phone, and every time I listen to these three non-negotiables, I have written down every single person's that I've listened to. So I must have about 20, 25, and I now have I have how many 75 notes in one note of just the 3 points that everyone mentions. And I just sometimes think that gives you a bit of a boost and a bit of a, okay, we can do this. And that's 45 minutes out of your day, but you can do it when you go out for a run or out for a walk or whenever. And I always wrote down the main points that I took away from the podcast, just because that's something that I tend to do. I don't know if anybody
Jodie, so your challenge then over the next few months, if that's okay, and weeks, is maybe every few days just to write down each person's three non-negotiables and put it in the group.
Dad, when am I going to have time to do that? No, I'm kidding. I'm already ahead because I've already got 15 or 20 of how many.
Perfect.
It's really good. So I would really recommend doing that, because it isn't all positive either. There's a lot of failures that people have, a lot of money people have lost, a lot of things that you don't probably get to hear usually. So it's a really good podcast to listen to. But if anyone has any other podcasts or articles or books, feel free to put them in the community as well. It's a good source for us to see if you just put your recommendations in. I'm always open to many recommendations, so feel free to just put anything in the chat. And those on the call, if you've not joined the community, it's on our pages, I think, Dan. If not, I can share a link. I'll share another link so you can accept, and we can accept you into the community as well. Anyone is welcome. So yeah, feel free to do that. The next session is on the 30th of June, Wednesday the 30th of June, but I'll circulate an email, as I always would do, and I'll put the Zoom links and the whatnot in the community chat as well. So yeah, but if anyone's got any questions or topics they want to discuss in particular, or if they just want to reach out to either Dan and I, please feel free to do so. We're always happy to hear from anyone. So yeah, please do that, and thank you so much for attending this evening, afternoon,
Thanks,
morning,
Jodie.
wherever you are in the world.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.